It's time for the show that engages with people of the combat sports world. And now, presenting the reigning, defending, undisputed combat sports show champion of the world, Flash Knockdown.
So now let's look at your flashlights and onto your first amateur MMA contest against Zach Fry at Almighty Fight Night 1 in Leeds. You featured after JJ, my guest on episode 9 of Flash Knockdown, who opened the show against your teammate, Brian Kenwright. It was a quick finish, getting the guillotine choke in less than a minute. Describe the feeling of winning and also in that fashion.
Yeah, it was nice. Like, going into that fight, like, I'd done a few big grappling comps leading up to it. So, like, I'd done a British Open, ADCC Nationals. Like, there was a few that I'd done. And, like, I was flying in them. Like, I didn't get a point scored on me in any of them. So, going into that fight, I was confident. Like, and then after it as well, finishing quick, I was like, thought I was the boy for a little bit. But then, a few fights out. But then I got a bit of a rude awakening after that. But yeah, it was a nice feeling. Zach's like, at the time, people might not have noticed because it was just like an 0-0 versus an 0-0. But like, Zach's now like challenging the titles and stuff like that. So that's a big win for me to have as well.
Yeah, and it was nice to see the respect you both showed each other. You know, even though he was clearly disappointed with himself, it was nice to see that you went over to his corner and gave him a hug. Yeah,
he's a good kid. I could train with him now. He comes down to our gym and spars and that. So
yeah. And you even gave us a dab after.
Oh, don't bring that up. I did a few things after me fights and interviews and stuff like that. And I look back on now and regret it.
Fair enough. And then on to 2018, which I think it's fair to say was your breakthrough year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so far, busiest to date as far as MMA is concerned. So let's start firstly with the contest versus Sandro at UKFC 7 in Preston. Another first round finish, another by way of guillotine choke. Were you more satisfied with that finish or the one you got versus Zach?
Probably, I think Zach was a better win, but more satisfied with that fight because going into the Sandro fight, because like I said, after that fight with Zach, like, I thought I was the boy. I'd not locked in jiu-jitsu. I was like, no, didn't have a point scored on me. I finished that fight in less than a minute. And then after that, I didn't fight for MMA for a little bit, but when I was competing jiu-jitsu, I was like, I got a few silvers, a few bronzes. I started losing a little bit. And then I had 2 MMA fights that I lost on the bounce. One was a split decision and a 4-1. And then the next one I got armbarred. So like,
was that the one, the split decision that was against Louis Morcel?
Yeah,
that was close.
Close fight. It could have went either way. I thought, obviously I'm going to say that, aren't I? But I did think I won. A lot of people I spoke to as well after it, like non-biased people as well, not just from my gym, from gyms that like they don't even really get on with us. It's going up to me after and saying I won a fight, but not bitter over it. It's one of them, and it was a good fight. One of me, like, I learned a lot from that. But like I said, I started like losing a little bit, and I started doubting myself a bit going into that Sandro fight. Like, I was still only a young kid as well, so what I didn't realise at the time, like, it seemed so important then. But just as a 16-year-old kid, like, I literally don't even think about none of that no more. But at the time, it was like, this fight, like, everything to me. Yeah. So when I went in and finished it quick, it was more just like, I was relieved. Because I knew what I could do. I was like in the gym, I was still like, I felt like I was still very skilled at that point. But I weren't doing it in my fights, and then I feel like I clicked that fight.
Wow.
That was nice, big relief.
And that's really good advice for anyone starting out in the amateurs, that, you know, don't get too hung up on your losses and don't get too carried away with your wins.
Yeah, it all means nothing at amateur. Yeah. It's just learning. As I said, stay consistent with your training and get as many fights in as you can against like real fights as well. Like, every one of my fights has been a real fight, even like the people with like lesser records. They're not just turning up to get beat. Like, I've had some tough people. I've had some of my harder fights have been against people with bad records, but they're in there to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because they see you as the big fish.
what I mean. Like it's big for them, and they want it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you watch people and they come in with like 5-0 record, they beat 5 bums, they have the first real fight and they just crumble. I've seen that loads of times. And that's not an actual fighter. I'd rather fight someone who's like got like an even record, but not just gonna quit after a few shots, but staying in there. I mean, I've had a few of them fights.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Liam. And you mentioned a couple of the setbacks, Liam. Just explain the confidence you got from that Sandro fight, because since then you've remained unbeaten in 7 domestic fights.
Yeah, well, and my only loss since then was another split decision at the IMAS, which I think I won as well. So I think that was a decision that I definitely should have won as well. So like I feel like I'm not really lost since that fight. I feel like I just clicked that night, like I was saying before about being consistent, and then something just clicks that you'll see with some people. It was the same thing when I was fighting. Like I competed a lot, but I feel like it never clicked. Like that night, I felt like when I was in there, it felt like natural, you know what I mean? So, and then from then onwards, every fight after that, I've had that same feeling. I'm calm in there.
Good. So let's now fast forward 4 months and look at the bouts versus Sam Gittins at UKFC 8, also in Preston. Physically, there was an obvious difference between the two of you. Could you feel it when you were in there with him?
Yeah, I was still a kid, and him and his brother Liam, they're both known for being like physical fighters. They're strong, and they just put a horrible pace out. They're like the gritties, you know what I mean? So I think I'd just turned 17 going into that fight. Like when I look back at the pictures, still just like a little scrawny kid. So like that's a big win for me. That big win, because like it's not just like beating him as an amateur anyway. They're good wins, but when you're doing it as still a kid, and he's a fully grown man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's a good win to have. And it was the way I beat him as well. Like they're known for being like grinders, you know what I mean? Stay in there, and like I outdone him, like you know what I mean? Put a pace on him.
You did. And the trips were very effective for you, weren't they?
Yeah, well, most of my fights, I'm used to like getting in on doubles and giving people airtime. And when I remember the first time I grabbed him, went to lift him up, and he weren't moving. He was like a little block.
You couldn't do it.
So I had to go switch it up a little bit, go to like more simple takedowns.
Yeah, you had to adjust your game.
Yeah, I had to adjust in the fight. Like my fights before that, I was used to was on a double leg coming up, and just started lifting him. He's like a little power cube, and he just wouldn't come off the floor.
Yeah, and I've got to ask, in the second round, Liam, you managed to get him into a rear naked. Did he tap?
I'll say he did. I'm sure at the time I did think he did.
Right.
And looking back on the video, I'm not sure. It's not for me to say, though, he might have been reaching for my glove, but I don't know. But on the video, it looks like there's a clear tap. But my arms were so dead, like couldn't even explain how. Because like I'm resting, I'm a kid resting with a fully grown man. Like after the first round, like my arms were like literally, I was struggling. So when I had the squeeze, I was holding them more. At the start, it was tight. And then I did think there was a tap. I felt like I eased up a little bit. And then when I went to squeeze again, it was just nothing there. I was just holding them. It was a bit of a mad one, but it's one of them, innit? I'm glad the fight didn't get stopped. I learned more from getting that extra round in, because I had to dig deep in that last round.
You really did.
I'm glad it went the way it did.
Yeah, and then so on that note, then Liam, between rounds 2 and 3, Sam's head coach Andy Brocklebank was making it clear to Sam that you had run out of steam as a way of getting into your heads, and of course motivating his guy. I'm guessing you noticed that, and if so, what impact did that have on you?
Yeah, he's a vocal coach. I knew that anyway. Yeah. Like our team, he's vocal, and when you're fighting, you can hear him. Remember in the second round, I was on his back, and he was screaming. I was right in his corner. He was screaming. I was thinking at the time, I just want to tell him to shut up here, but it didn't have the balls.
Yeah, because he was saying, pass his guard. Yeah,
he was screaming, and I think if it was happening now, I would be confident enough to just look up and say something to him. But at the time, I was thinking, I don't want to do that, then lose. But I've got rid of all them thoughts now. But I wanted to say that, and then I remember going into the third, but all that where he was like shouting, but nothing fazed me when I'm in there, and I'd never quit. Like I think they thought like I might have crumbled or something like that. I come out stronger that round. You can see it in the video as well. Like I'm like pushing my corner out the way. I always like get to the middle before them, just like a mental game, and I was absolutely f***ed as well. But the thing is, like the fights, you got to remember they always are as well. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, you closed the last rounds in very dominating fashion, locking in the body triangle and almost finishing the contest via rear naked choke. Pretty impressive against a guy whose wins have all been by rear naked choke. What was the biggest takeaway for you?
Like I said, the way I beat him, like I weren't meant to win that fight. I feel like I'm a lot more skilled than him, but it was like a man versus a boy. But I managed to use my skill in the right way as well, and I almost beat him in his own game. So I'm still, even when that's a win, I can look back on and be proud of.
Yeah, I would agree. And then 6 weeks later, you took on Curtis Campbell at Cage Warriors Academy, Northwest 4 in Liverpool. How soon after the Sam fight was the offer of taking on Curtis put to you?
That fight was already confirmed. So I think I was confirmed to fight Curtis before I was meant to fight Sam. So it was a bit of a mad one. Like I was meant to be, I was confirmed to fight Curtis not long after the Sandro fight. And then I was meant to be fighting someone else my age on UKFC in October, with the one that I fought Sam on. And a week before, the kid pulled out, and Sam was meant to be fighting, and he had to pull out as well. So it was a bit of a mad one. It was my first time fighting like a proper man, but I took it anyway. And then the Curtis fight was 6 weeks after that, but that was already confirmed, so I knew I was fighting Curtis anyway.
I see, because Curtis also fought on that same cards at
Yeah,
UKFC.
that's what I remembered. I knew I was fighting him, so he was the first fight, I think, so I remember watching that.
Yeah, he opened the show. That's correct. And I guess the decision was made easier when you found out that there was a belt on the line. Were you more nervous or excited ahead of that particular fight, Liam?
Like, I don't really get nervous about them fights. Like, in the moments when you're about to walk out and stuff like that, you get the nerves. But just like that, I get fights like them. Like, that's what like wakes me up in the morning. I like that. Like, I feel like the fights that I've had where I've been fighting someone like who I don't, training camps aren't as good. The fight, like big fights like that, especially when there's belts on the line and stuff like that. Then
Yeah,
going
that's what it's about, isn't it?
That's what
what
you do
it's
it for.
about. Yeah,
So
yeah. Love
I
that.
don't get when it gets confirmed. I'm not like worrying about it. It's like go fight camp.
Yeah, true that. And JJ, who I mentioned earlier, he fought Marlon that day for the junior flyweight strap. He described both matchups as great matchmaking. Do you agree?
Yeah, it was. Well, like this was the same thing with like the Zach Fry win at the time. It might not have looked like a big win, or if people look back on my record, they might not see it and be like, because it brings what their record was at the time up, and it might have been like 1-0 or something like that. So people will just look past that. But if you're looking at it for like skill wise, that's why that fight got made. It was a title fight, but we'd only probably had like 4 or 5 fights between us, me and Curtis, maybe less. But like people knew how like both of us were skilled, and same with Marlon and JJ. They fought before, like people could look at them like they're 2 skilled kids. Like, and it's good that all 4 of us took the fights. That's how it should be, taking hard fights.
Yeah, I agree. And it would be remiss if I didn't ask your take on Marlon's fight with JJ. What did you make of it?
Well, I couldn't really watch it at the back. I hate it when I'm like after my teammate because I can't help but watch. I've done it at the last show. Like I was the next fight, and I'm stood there looking through the door, watching the fight, and like, I'm fighting next. And it was the same thing with Marlon. Man, I end up, you can't not watch it. But yeah, it was a tough fight. I think Marlon probably underestimated him a little bit. He said that himself, like because the first fight wasn't really too close. He kind of just walked through him. Second fight though, got to give it to JJ. He showed up, you know what I mean? And like, I think Marlon gassed a little bit. JJ turned up, but Marlon, like I said, he's the same as me. He's not going to quit as it gets hard. He's stuck in there and seeing it through.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So following that Curtis fight, Liam, would you say getting your first taste of MMA gold made you hungry for more?
Yeah, definitely. 100%. I knew it, like that was when I started realising like I'm at that level now. I remember when I used to be a little kid watching the shows, watching title fights, like they were bossed people winning them, and then I'd got my first one and it was a big one as well. So I started to realise like this is the level I'm at now. And that's just more motivation. Like after that, most of my fights were against like adults then, all of them. So like a bit of a kick up the arse. Like I've got, especially when you got a belt as well, people come after you. You know what I mean? Like I've got a target on me back then because of that. So it just makes you train harder.
That's correct. Great attitude, Liam. Love it. So then on your return after injury, you moved up to featherweight against Sikia from Belgium at AFC 12 in Liverpool. he seemed very confident, but that was soon dampened when he heard all of those boos.
The record of 3 wins and 3 defeats, representing Da Vinci Fighting, Sinkir and his opponent stands.
How good does it feel to hear those cheers and supports? And do you think you'll miss that if you potentially have to compete in front of no crowd?
Oh, like all my mates are vocal when you go to the shows. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Even when I'm not fighting, you hear them. They just come up with all mad shouts, and that's funny.
Liam McCraken. Liam McCraken.
It's nice having them there, but like that's just before and after the fight. Like in the actual fight, it doesn't make a difference to me. When I'm walking out, I can hear it and stuff like that. Obviously, it's a good feeling, and I like going to see them all before the fight. And then that feeling when you win after it, and you get to go out and like you feel like you're the man and you get to see everyone. That's a boss feeling. But when it comes down to it, when you're actually fighting, none of that matters. Like I'm not thinking about like people in the crowd, so it doesn't affect the fight. It obviously affects like partying and stuff after it and stuff like that. But
yeah,
in the moment for the fight, now it's not going to make a difference. Obviously, I hope people will be there, but if not, then it's not going to affect the fight.
True. And then you got the armbar locked in with 10 seconds to go in a fight you were going to win anyway. However, if you had another 10 seconds at the end of the second round, do you feel you would have finished it then?
Yeah, that was tight, that armbar. What I was saying before, like about the records and that he's like a prime example of it, that kid. Like, took a beating him, he was doing me. I didn't like, there was no way he was going to win. Like, the first 2 rounds with 10-8, put a proper beating on him. And like the third round, he come out and was still giving me. So I was like, oh, fuck it. He was a tough kid, him. So I had to give it to him, but I wanted to get that finish. So I didn't know if I got it as well, because as I finished the armbar, it was tight as well. I felt his arm popping, and he tapped. But the 10-second clap, the 10-second clacker went.
Yeah.
But I didn't know whether that was the bell. So I stood up and said to the ref, I said, "Does that count as a finish?" And he was like, "Yeah."
Wow, really? I didn't notice that.
I thought it was the bell that went, so I didn't know. But he said, "Yeah." So I was made up with that. It was a big finish.
Wow, how lucky is that? Okay.